This is our first lesson in angles. We're going to begin this lesson by identifying a lot of vocabulary and identifying those on a plane. Okay, so go ahead and begin about transversals and angles. Our first vocabulary word is perpendicular. And what we need to remember about perpendicular is basically is two lines that form a 90-degree angle. If you need a visual of a 90-degree angle, again, you can use an L. Okay, that would be this part right here, is a 90-degree angle. You also might hear it referred to as a right angle. A right angle is equal to 90 degrees. You might see it written a couple ways. First way you might see it written is if you have M is perpendicular to N. So you're going to see this little thing right here that looks like an upside down T. That means perpendicular. If you were to actually see a visual, this is what it would look like. You would see that, and then you would probably see a red box. And again, this is your 90-degree box. Okay. This just means that this line right here and this line right here, because that's what the 90-degree box is touching, forms 90 degrees. Okay. Parallel. Parallel is just two lines that never intersect. If you don't know what intersect means to cross. So these are two lines that will never ever cross on a plane. Okay. You will see it written like this. You will see a line and another line just below it or to the side of it. If it's written up and down, you will see it typically with a red arrow on both of them. This is again indicating that these two lines are parallel. So if this was line M and this was line N, we might write M is parallel, and again we do that with basically two vertical L's is what it looks like to N. So I would read this, M is parallel to N. Okay. Next, we're going to look at a lot of transversal and angles that are created. So what I want you to do first thing is kind of think about the streets around us. So we have Ingersoll that's south of us and Grand that's south of us. Both of those roads run parallel to one another. So this is Grand and this is Ingersoll. Okay. With Grand and Ingersoll, we have a line that intersects both of them. That road would be 31st Street. Okay, so this is 31st Street. So with this example, I want to go ahead and review or touch upon some vocabulary that we have going on. I'm going to go ahead and draw in my red arrows for you to indicate that these two lines are parallel. Notice that the 31st Street did not get a red arrow because it is not parallel to Grand and Ingersoll. I also did not put in a right angle, 90-degree mark, because these do not necessarily form 90-degree angles. Okay, so the first vocabulary word I want you to look at is what's called a transversal line. And basically a transversal line is a line that intersects two parallel lines. So again, intersects means to cross. So in this example, 31st Street is your transversal line. So 31st Street is your transversal line because it is the line that intersects both Grand and Ingersoll. Okay. When we have a line intersect two lines, 8 angles are then created. Okay. So, for example, right here, when this line intersects Grand, we end up with an angle here, an angle adjacent to that one, adjacent to the 2, and adjacent to 1 and 3. So we ended up with 4 angles that are created when 31st Street intersected Grand. We also have 4 other angles created when 31st Street intersected Ingersoll. We're going to label those 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and identify interior angles. Interior means to be inside. So interior angles are angles inside of the two parallel lines. So angles inside the two parallel lines. So we have to be able to identify the two parallel lines. The two parallel lines are Grand and Ingersoll. So what I want are the angles that are between, so right here where my finger is, okay, between are the ones that I covered up, between the two parallel lines of Grand and Ingersoll. Those interior angles would be angles 3, angle 4, angle 5, and angle 6. So angle 3, 4, 5, and 6 are interior angles. Along with interior, we have what we call exterior. Exterior just means to be on the outside. So these are angles outside the parallel lines. So here's our two parallel lines, Grand and Ingersoll. So basically I want the lines that are completely south of Grand and the angles that are completely north of Ingersoll. So those would be angles 1, angle 2, angle 7, and angle 8. So angle 1, 2, 7, and 8 are exterior angles because they are outside of the Grand and Ingersoll parallel lines. So those are the ones that are on the outside looking in. Okay. Next, we're going to have alternate interior angles. So if you don't know what it means to alternate, it means to basically where you alter or you take turns, okay? So think about it going through a revolving door. There's 4 people waiting to go in. It's where the second person in the line waits for the first person to go, then the second person goes, then the third person, and then the fourth person in one of those revolving doors. So basically you're alternating inside into the wherever your building you're going to. The alternate interior angles are angles on the inside of the parallel lines and opposite sides of the transversal line. Okay, so that's a little bit different than interior angles. So alternate interior angles are angles on the inside of the parallel lines and opposite sides of transversal. So in this case, we're going to end up with pairs. Okay, so angle 4 and the pair with angle 4, so if I slide it up real quick, so again, angle 3, 4, 5, and 6 are the interior angles. So alternate interior angle 4 is paired on the opposite side of the transversal line, okay, down here. We don't want the adjacent angle, we want the one down here. So angle 4 and angle 6 are alternate interior angles. The same can be said about angle 3 and angle 5. Those two are also pairs of alternate interior angles. So 4 is paired with 6, 3 is paired with 5. We'll get into it later on, but we'll talk about how these are congruent. 3 and 5 are congruent, 4 and 6 are congruent. Alternate exterior angles. Whew, there's a lot of vocabulary. Alternate exterior angles. Just like interior, except for now they're on the outside. So angles outside the parallel lines and on and opposite sides of the transversal line. I'll go ahead and slide that up so you can see. Okay. So again, alternate exterior angles, angles outside the parallel lines and on opposite side of the transversal line. Okay. So examples of those in this one that we have here with Grand, Ingersoll, and 31st Street. So angle 1 and angle 2, angle 7 and angle 8 were exterior angles. Angle 1 is partnered with angle 7 because, again, those on the opposite sides of the transversal line on the outside of those two parallel lines. So angle 1 and angle 7 are paired together, along with angle 2 and angle 8 are paired together. So 1 is with 7, 2 is with 8. Okay? And so I wrote that down here. Angle 1 and 7, angle 2 and 8 are alternate exterior angles. And our last vocabulary word, I know it feels like we would never get here, corresponding angles. This is angles in the same position on the parallel lines I'll go ahead and slide that up. In relation to the transversal line. Okay. This one's going to end up with 4 pairs. So corresponding angles will actually have 4 pairs when you have a pair of parallel lines with a transversal line. So let's go ahead and identify those 4 pairs. Okay. The first one that we're going to look at is, think about it, the Daytona 500 just took place the other day. We have basically, this is your row of cars. So you have space between the cars when they're starting and they're going that direction. Okay. And then each car is kind of set. If I drew a line between each pair of cars, so like angle 1 would be paired with angle 5. So that's one corresponding pair. Angle 2 is paired with angle 6. So 2 and 6. Angle 4 is paired with angle 8. Notice how they're both below and to the left of the parallel lines when cut it by the transversal line. And then the last pair is angle 3 and angle 7. So again, angle 1 with 5, 2 is 6, 4 and 8, 3 and 7 are all corresponding angles. And I'll slide that down so that way you can see it. So corresponding angles in the same position on the parallel lines in relation to the transversal line. 1 and 5, 2 and 6, 4 and 8, 3 and 7. If you've not noticed, this little line here that looks like an L, okay, this just means angle, in case you're wondering. So this means angle.